Hello and welcome to Willow Tree Art. Today we're going to be going through the drawing basics. So, as you can see here, I've drawn out a variety of places you would use shading. These are 3D objects. This is how you would shade in the objects of a face. And this is just where I'm going to show you different gradients and ways to go along this and the do's and don'ts of shading. Okay, so let's start. We'll start from here, making our way over this way across the page. So, the first thing you need to establish with any piece of artwork you're going to do is where the source of light is coming from. For the purpose of this, I'm going to establish an individual source of light for every single piece of an object. So, first one, it's coming from here into this direction. On the second one, I'm going to have it coming from here onto here. And on the third one, I'm going to have the light coming from here. That means that this area here, on this object, should be the lightest. And this area here should be the darkest. On here, that means that there should be, basically the lightest point should be in about a dot there, and the darkest should be around this perimeter here. On here, that means the lightest side should be the top face of it, slightly going a bit darker to the edge, and this should go light to dark here, but not as light, because that comes in the middle of this face. And here, it should go from the same darkness as that, just a slight bit darker, all the way down to the bottom corner, which should be the darkest point of the whole shape. So, for each one of these, I'm going to use a different colour. On the first one, I shall use a dark blue to show you how it will look. So, as I said, this should be the lightest point. It may take a few seconds for you to see on whatever you're watching. Yeah, so this is starting to get a bit darker as we go across. And don't worry if you ever think that you've not gone dark enough. It's always better to go too light in an area and be able to make it darker than it is to go too dark in an area. Because if you go too dark, it is very hard to bring it back if you are not using a rubbable pencil. By rubbable, I mean like you can erase it. These aren't, to my knowledge, erasable. And yeah, just keep going over until you're satisfied with a gradient on that. So, as I said here, you will then take that point there at the same darkness and go across. And you should try your hardest to get to the hardest point of your pencil there. And like I said, you can just go back over if you aren't satisfied with how dark an area is. So here, I'm going to try and make that as dark as I possibly can. However, you can slightly see that it does get a bit lighter towards the top there. And really, you can just make that a tiny bit darker towards here, just to elaborate darkness. Obviously, just blend that in whenever you do any changes like that. And obviously here, there's still a bit of light shining on, so you don't have to go as hard. However, you do have to do your best to get darker quicker on this face than you did on the first one. Because basically what this face is for, when the light is pointing in this direction, it's basically this has to match up with almost the same lightness as this corner here, and it also has to match up with the same darkness of this edge here. And you want to get really dark really quickly on this face, however you want to stay at the same shade as that corner on here. And that isn't the best I could have done, but it gives you an idea of how you shade that. And obviously always try and keep a direction on it, so here your direction would be going down like that. Here your direction is sort of on an angle, and here your direction is always on an angle from the fact that it has to match up with that corner and that corner. Okay? Right. So next I'll pick up the next colour, which I think will be orange for this shape. We will then start from darkest to lightest, because you're trying to on this shape you're trying to make it so that it's round, and you can't go from lightest because you don't know where your point is actually going to end up in that sort of scenario. How I like to do this is I like to stick in one area for a small bit of time, so I'll try and get that as dark as I can, and then I'll just start to come out a tiny bit. And this isn't how it's going to go in the end necessarily. This could be the exact lightness, but I'm not sure whether that'll be it yet. However, you just keep going across, just keeping the same grip on this pencil, making sure that nothing shows lines. You just want it to smoothly blend through to the other colours you've already done. The last thing you want is a visible line showing where you've connected two pieces of shading in one shape, unless you were doing something like a cube. However, if you're doing something which has no other lines in the shape, you never ever want it to show lines where the shading is connected, unless you're doing gradients, which is what we'll cover later. However, you can already start to see on this shape the shading connecting. Always try and make sure as well, if you're doing something dark, that you can't actually see any light in between something, because maybe when you get to about here it will be fine for little bits of light to appear inside of your shading, unless it's something that doesn't require that. However, when you're about here, you don't want that. Right, so now I've established the lightest point of my shape based on what I've done, which now means you just want to keep going around in circles until you match up with the same shade of the rest of this. And see, I have now noticed that this looks almost the exact same shade as this, so I'll now go over and make that a bit darker. Which will add to the effect that there is a point of light coming in. But if you notice, my point of light is here, meaning that the lightest part should be here. And that wouldn't work if your lightest point was, like, if, for example, your light source is here, but you've then made your lightest area there, that wouldn't actually work. One thing I will say though is that if you are doing a drawing, you just need to know where your light source is. You can't draw these arrows on necessarily unless you're doing it at the start of drawing and you're doing these in pencil. It's not really a wise decision to go and mark them on a drawing, because you might miss them or something and they'll be left on the drawing in the end. But yeah, as you can see, that shape is now done. Let's move on in a second. So for this last shape, I think I'll go for a green. And as we established, the light source is coming in from here, which does make this the darkest point across this edge. And once again, because it is one of those shapes where you want to keep your darkest point over here, I usually, with any shape that's going to have a curve, start in the darkest area. I don't with things like cubes, but this is a cylinder, so I prefer to go for my darkest area over here first. Oh yeah, also don't worry if you can't get it in the first place. If you don't have like the best quality pencils, by best I don't mean like you have to have perfect ones. Currently I'm using pencils that the whole set costs £3. And these are working a treat. However, if you're using something like a set of these pencils that cost £1, they might not be the best quality, causing you to have a bad shade on anything you draw, because it's not always actually up to your skill that allows you to shade things correctly. It's sometimes up to the equipment you are using, because I know I've drawn some pictures where I've not actually managed to get a good gradient or something like that, based on the fact that I've not been using the best quality pencils. And we have almost actually done with this face. This is one of the quicker shapes to shade, since it doesn't have as many faces or tricky patterns. However, now I'm going to go up here because your light source is down here. So this is a sort of trickier thing, because this has to be your lightest area over here, and this has to be your darkest area. So that's a harder shape to do compared to the cylinder. Sorry, this is the cylinder, I mean sphere. Because you now have to keep your darkest point over there. And once again, just curving around like this. And don't worry if you can't pick up this way of shading as well. It's taken me about 2 years to get this perfect and actually shading well. But actually, whilst we were talking about the equipment a minute ago, one thing I will say helps is pencils that aren't scratchy. So it's not that when you draw over one bit it just scratches down again, it just easily blends over it again. Also, you may have noticed actually I'm not using perfectly sharp pencils. If you look at that, they aren't sharp, and sure I've just drawn something with it, but this is the sharpest pencil I've currently got on the table. It's not the thinnest point you can do, which you don't actually need if you're not doing much detail, from the fact that if you use loads of detail on a picture, you will need a sharp point because you're adding in loads of fine details. However, if you're just trying to shade something, you don't need a fine point, because that could completely destroy it. That will make your pencil scratchy, which is why I haven't actually sharpened these before the video, because they don't need to be. If you're just sharpening, you don't need, like if you're just shading, you don't need your pencils sharp. If you're adding detail, you do. So we will actually do that in a minute. First, let's move down here for gradients. So by gradient I mean 2 colours. Sometimes you can do a 3-colour gradient, it's up to you. Sometimes the effect you'll be looking for is 1 colour, however different shades of it. In that sort of circumstance, if you have it on hand, it is sometimes worth using 2 different colours. By colours I mean 2 different pencils. I normally like to keep the same brand, just light blue and dark blue. If I'm doing like a blue. If I'm doing a red, I would do red and pink, or I would drop out the red if it needed to be a pink, and I would do a darker pink and a light pink. However, right now I'm going to go from dark pink to light blue, just to show this. So first you put in the first colour you want, which would normally be the one at the top. So you do that by just starting your colour again from the darkest point, like I said earlier, and just making your way down to the lighter one. Now, even if my colours are going to meet in the middle, I normally prefer to try and keep them going till the end, even if you can almost see nothing by the time you get to the bottom. Just because if you keep it going, you don't have to worry that a colour's not going to meet up or just anything like that. You can just feel safe and secure with the fact that your colours aren't going to look dodgy. They are just going to meet up perfectly. However, like I say, you don't want your colours to be in a position where they're just really dark still by the time you get down here. You want to almost see nothing by the time you get down there. Sometimes you just want to put a tiny little scribble there. It's just so that there's colour there. So in this situation, I'm doing a gradient where it goes from dark to light to dark. However, really it's actually dark to light, just slightly darker, but it's actually a lighter colour. So I just put that in, and once again we go from dark up, keep going, and you want to get this colour to start fading into the other one, and you'll just keep it going until you get to the top. You'll pretty much just see nothing already. However, it's just the colours being there mixing together that makes it look good. Now I'll keep going until you can see it, and that is a gradient between a pink and a light blue. So once again it goes from dark to light to dark. Now sometimes you'll want to make it go from dark to light, and that means that you actually may just want 1 colour, and in this situation I'd normally just put a line there, and then I would just do what I did at the top of this one and at the bottom of this one, and I will just keep going down as if there was nothing up here, as if this is just a shape itself. Just keep doing that, and then once again do the same up at the top here, just sending that colour up, and that means that you've got dark to light. So next we're going to use these same colours but go up here, so you might want a diagonal gradient, which is where you just basically do the exact same things, but here you'll basically get your colours light by the time they meet the corners of this shape. So you will just that, and this is almost the medium shade of this colour. It's just not too much pressure, but not enough pressure basically. And then you pick up your second colour and you do the same thing again. So you start from your darkest point, and you go up like that. And you just keep going until you're happy with the shading on it. And then, once again, if you want it at like halfway, you just split whatever shape it is down the middle, and you just shade. And then you do that up again. And that goes up. Right, so next we're going to use some greens. And here, I think I will go diagonal on this shape. So I might want to draw a line there with that colour, and draw a line there with that colour. And then here I will just go darkest to lightest, going along like that. Try and stay within one shape at a time, so this is turned into 4 triangles rather than one large rectangle. So I would just keep that going, and then I would do it in an opposite up here. However, then I'll go down here, and then I'll do the same up here with this one. And that makes that shape. However, now I'm going to use these lines, and I'm going to go up, shading into that one, and up, shading into that one, and then I will do the same here. So up and down. Now, there's not many places where you'd actually need that, however, it's sometimes useful, and obviously there isn't much point in doing that there, because you'd just go like that and do the same thing. That's just quick what I'm doing right now, just because I don't want to bother you guys. I'm saying that. And here, I'm just going to show you with a pencil, and this is just normal. You could write with this really. That's what it says. And I'll just go darkest to lightest. Darkest to lightest, and then in a diagonal, darkest to lightest. And that's basically just black to white, which is just a simpler way of doing what you did here. However, you're only using one actual colour, and you're using the advantage of the paper colour as the other colour. Okay? Right, so next we're just going to show you the shading of the face, so that, yeah. So always, whenever you've got lines, use them as your darkest points. So I'll currently just mark them out with the colour pencil I'm going to use. I'm going to use this colour pencil as I have it on hand. And yeah, basically you would just make the lines the darkest points rather than actually placing down something, as this line here would normally mean that behind it it would be almost like it would be the darkest. However, this isn't as light here as you can see it. Yeah, and obviously you then take that out as the lightest area due to the fact that you've made that lightest, and this would be the darkest area of the face. But yeah. Right, so I hope you enjoyed today's video. This has just been some basics of shading and some do's and don'ts of drawing. So once again, your pencil quality does sometimes matter. It's not always the thing though. Try and get in as much practice of doing the curves because it does take a while. You'll find that depending on the pencils you use and your own skills, you may do it in different ways. And yeah, that's it. Hope you enjoyed the video, and goodbye.